Can you hear the aeroplane overhead? Hello and welcome. Just taking a moment to set myself up. And if you're a member of my Facebook group, FlowerStart World, or you follow me on Instagram, you'll have worked out that I have been on holiday. So I've got a couple of things to show you. First of all, let's move these flowers out of the way. I grew them myself, so I'm feeling pretty proud. And look, there's a bee buzzing around to find out what's in there. And that's the huge, chunky vase that I bought. Gosh, you're a long way away. That I bought at the car boot fair. Asked the lady the price. She said £5. Went round at the end of the boot fair and the price was reduced to £2. So I was pretty pleased about that. So we've been to St Ives, taken our summer holiday a little bit earlier than normal because exams are over, so we were ahead of the game. So St Ives was beautiful. It was hot. I shouldn't say it was really hot, because back home you were having a heat wave, a heat dome over the rest of Europe, and I think experiencing locally temperatures of 34 degrees. We were thankfully a good 10 degrees cooler. The sand was beautiful and white, the sea was turquoise, but because it was the Atlantic Ocean, it was absolutely freezing. So I only managed 2 swims, but I did manage to get to the charity shops. So in St Ives, there was the British Heart Foundation, the red charity shop. There was Cancer Research, the blue charity shop. There was a local children's hospice shop that had a green, sort of lime green frontage. And then, because my pal Lisa, you know Lisa and Jan that I do my flower arranging with and my thrift shopping with, she is a regular in Cornwall, and she said, don't forget to check out the church. So I think it was the Baptist Zionist Church off the main street in St Ives, which I think is called Fore Street, F-O-R-E. And it was set back a little bit, and it was a church, but it had limited opening hours, 11 till 3, and it took me 3 goes to get there between 11 and 3, and to get there when they were actually open between 11 and 3. So I didn't go mad crazy with my buying because I didn't see anything I particularly wanted. But what I did buy, I'm hiding behind this package here, is some blue and white. So do not be mistaken, this is not Cornish ware, but it's definitely got that look of it with those classic blue and white stripes. And if you know anything about Cornish ware, the blue and white is the traditional, but they do it in all colours now. So I have been looking for a tea caddy for several months now. It's got the original seal on it. I don't know how old this is. To me, it looks like a sort of 1980s top, sort of brush marks going around, but it's crazed. So I've washed it out. It's only going to have tea bags in it. It'll be fine. And the back stamp says Trade Winds Tableware. It looks very similar to chefware, which again looks very similar to Cornish ware. And I was very pleased to buy it because I've got the Cornish ware stripes without the Cornish ware price, although this was £5. And the other thing I bought, because I'm going through my blue and white phase, I've been heavily influenced by Lady Mary Beth's YouTube channel. She talks a lot about blue and white and chinoiserie and willow pattern and all sorts of things. And if you haven't joined her Facebook page, which is called Lady Mary Beth's Table, you ought to. It's lovely. So I got this, actually I didn't buy this in Cornwall, I bought it this morning on the way home from my Pilates class, because Lady Mary Beth talks a lot about ginger jars. So did this ever have a lid on top? I'm not entirely sure. But one thing I've learned from Lady Mary Beth is about not saving your best stuff to best and to put it to another use. So she quite often talks about using cut glass rose bowls to put tissues in. You know, you take them out of the tissue box, put them in, and you have your very own classy tissue dispenser, which I did when we all had winter colds at the beginning of the year. But I didn't have a rose bowl, you know, a round rose bowl. My rose bowl was rounded, but it had like a 3/4 opening at the top, so it worked, but the opening was too big. So I actually thought I could put this to use for our paper tissues as a paper tissue dispenser. And I'm just thinking that perhaps, if anything, this hole is going to be too small to take my tissues out of the box and to push them in and then be able to take them out. This was £3. It hasn't got a back stamp on it. It's got that chinoiserie look with the blossoms. I paid £3 and I know it's got a crack in it. But you know, sometimes when you're just desperate to find something, I will keep a lookout for one that's in better condition, or a conventional cut glass rose bowl that's got a smaller hole in the top, and I may well pass this on. And the other thing that I've bought is a piece of fabric. This cost me £1, and it was craft night last night with my friends Jan and Lisa, and I had decided I was going to remake one of my oh, I got to sneeze, one of my dories excuse me, the straw based one. Do you remember seeing the video I made when I cut up lots of fabric, sort of handkerchief size, and I was pushing them into the straw wreath using the prongs of my scissors? So and then I added on some blue and white plates at the back. I decided eventually I didn't really like the blue and white plates. I didn't really like the fabric that I'd chosen, so I took it all apart. The fabric went to a local lady who uses scrap fabrics for charity projects, and the plates that I didn't want went to the charity shop. So I'd taken with me for craft night my wreath, and I decided that I wanted to remake it using some of the fabric from my mum's patchwork stash. But when I was actually looking at the fabric, it was all printed on one side, and the problem with making a rag wreath, either by knotting fabric or pushing it in, is that the material sort of flares up, and you've got to think about which way up, whether you're putting the wrong side down or the wrong side up, in order that when you've secured your fabric in place, that it doesn't, it shows its best side. And the easiest way of doing that is to choose fabric that's double-sided. So this looks a little bit like the napkins I've previously thrifted. It's double-sided. It's a little bit, it's probably stiffer than I wanted. It's almost like, an upholstery fabric weight or a heavy-duty tablecloth. But again, it was one of those things where I thought, I need to make a start. I was getting that itch of buying things from the charity shop. So it may well be that, I'll have to collect quite a lot of fabric in order to make the wreath. I did see some gentlemen's shirts, and a top tip from Lisa is she buys gentlemen's shirts from the charity shop, and she takes great care and delight in cutting the fabric off and cutting out the seams and saving the buttons. So it gives her reasonable sized pieces, the back of the shirt, the two panels at the front, the two arms once they've been ironed flat. So I may go down that route, and there were some lovely shirts in the charity shop this morning. They were £4 each. So I didn't want to buy them. Sometimes it's just too much, and the added bonus for my fabric is I got a lovely purple ribbon to go with it. Now, let's get on to the flowers, shall we? I realise I'm sitting very low in this chair. Whenever I go on holiday, I always take my floristry scissors with a view to doing some flower arranging, and I wanted to share that with you when I was on holiday, but we were so remote that there wasn't a strong Wi-Fi signal, so I wasn't able to bring you the latest flower arranging class. But I had this idea, and I keep a note. As many of you know, I belong to 2 flower clubs, and the one that I go to on a Sunday every other month is the more designer one. And I have a note in my little book, and I don't need to buy a notebook ever again because I've got all my daughter's old exercise books from school, the ones that are only part filled, and I've nearly reached the end of this one. But I can tell you that on the 24th of November 2024, I went to a workshop with Anne Kennedy, and she did a number of arrangements. And I think I made 2 of them, but as an added extra, she showed us some little projects that we could also think about doing. And this is one of these. So it calls for a couple of items. She used a flower pot. I'm going to be using one of these jam jars, the Bon Maman jam jars. I noticed these were for sale at the charity shop, recycled ones for 50p each. You can also buy them online, empty. Of course, you could buy them premium pot of jam if you wanted to. I don't know how much that would cost you. Probably nearly about £3, I would think. And you'll notice that my lid has slightly smaller squares than the proper Bon Maman jam lid. That's because over time they rust, and I bought myself a pack of jam jar lids. I will try and remember to link the lids and the jam jars in the description once I finish filming, and if I can find the rag wreath that I was going to make at Craft Club. I take jam jars on holiday with me as well, because they are really good for fruit. So we go to the supermarket. Normally I go swimming in the morning, I bring home breakfast and bring the makings of a picnic. So we want to keep our fresh fruit uptake high on holiday, and then I give everybody a jam jar of mixed fruit, so blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, grapes, whatever it might be, and we take these out for our picnic. And of course they're really good for saving leftovers if you have been self-catering, a bit of pasta sauce in there, that kind of thing. And also it's really good for arranging flowers in. So Anne used a flower pot for her arrangement, but a jam jar is the kind of thing I would actually take on holiday. But she did also use this. There's a specialist item here, which again I will leave a link to in the description underneath this video. And these are crafting foam, I don't know what you call them, sheets. That's the word I was looking for, sheets. So they probably come in lots of colours. I don't know whether I chose black because I wanted black, or it was probably the most subdued colour. So it's foam. It's the kind of thing if you had preschool children, or quite youngish early years children at primary school, that they probably, it's quite easy to cut out shapes, and then you probably would have stuck those shapes onto a piece of paper to make a work of art. So what she said to do is to take the sheet, fold it in half like this, and then roll it up and put it in your jam jar. Now, I haven't done this before, so I am practicing with you live, because I am just worried. Well, I'm not worried about it, but I am just thinking, what potential problems could I have? One of those problems is that when I put the water into the jam jar, whether the little black roll-up foam is going to pop up and float to the top. So it's sitting there quite firm at the moment. What I did was I put it down, but I had the folded end down, and that creates sort of spiral of pockets like that. So I will put some photographs under the community tab afterwards, so you can see what I mean, as we are sitting so far from each other. I think I'm going to do the same again. Now I could continue rolling in a swish roll fashion to get a chunkier, or should I roll it and get 2 rolls inside? I think I might like to sort of have perhaps 2 rolls inside, make it look a bit more, I don't know, organic. So this one has sort of relaxed out a little bit, so I will roll that up. Actually, the foam reminds me a little bit of is it net proline? What a wetsuit's made out of. I could have done with a wetsuit swimming in Cornwall. So I'm going to push those down. They seem to be quite a good fit, but one of them's a total circle and one of them has sort of become elongated, and there's lots of space around the sides. So I am going to roll it up as if it's one continuous roll. So if I've got that one folded there, folded here, and I might just slide the 2 together so one's sitting inside the other, and then get rolling. So because I know it's going to expand and sort of relax into position, I will roll it as tightly as I can, a bit like rolling your sleeping bag. Do you remember those days when you used to go camping? Rolling your sleeping bag up, making sure it was nice and tight so you didn't take up too much in the car. So when I hold that up, the roll is a little smaller than the base of my jam jar, but when I put it into the jam jar, I thought it was going to unfurl. It hasn't unfurled as much as I thought it would, but I might just give it a little bit of an ease out, because the idea is that once I've put the water into the jam jar, I've then got these pockets when I can arrange flowers inside. So if I was going with the Cornish theme, perhaps I should have chosen that sort of royal. It's not a royal blue, it's sort of just a mid blue, not royal blue, not navy blue, it's just blue. So I'm going to let that relax a little bit. One thing you might want, it almost looks like a little rose. Shall I show you that close up? A little rose in the middle. But you can see, I've got some tight sections and some looser. but it's quite nice. In fact, talking about looking like a rose, it is very similar, and we're so used to seeing roses in their profile form that quite often when you're arranging flowers, if you've got your roses sort of upright like little soldiers, you only see that silhouetted form and not the beautiful curl of all the petals. So it's quite nice with roses if you can make an arrangement. Do you remember when the fashion was for the Biedermeier style bouquets, when it was just packed out with a single flower, lots and lots and lots of roses, and you put it low down on a coffee table so you could sort of look down on it and sort of be lost in all that luxury of the petals. So I am, as I say, just going to ease it out and then carefully put my water in. So as I say, I'm just wondering whether the whole lot is just going to bounce up. You know, it's foam, it's a bit like a swimming float. Is it all going to lift up? And also because I folded the foam sheets, I need to make sure I get water inside the reservoir, you know, inside the V shape, so that wherever I decide to put my flowers are still actually in water. And I would say probably that's the number one reason why your flowers die or go over sooner than you might think, is because they're not actually in water. And I made exactly the same mistake with my glass jar here. You know, you stand at the kitchen sink filling your jar up, and I was, you know, quite often when we're just filling something with water, we're not looking, we're not measuring, we just sort of think, oh, you know, and then we turn the tap off. And it's only when you then look at it in profile and think, actually, it's not so much water in there. And because my vase is so heavy, the first time I arranged the flowers, I just kept them as the water as it was. But I did discover that with the heat that we've been having and the fact that I should have perhaps filled it to 3/4 rather than half, that some of the flowers are dying off. And of course, some of them will just be dying naturally because they've got a shelf life, but some of them I do feel I'd have hastened their demise because their feet weren't actually in water. So this is the second remake of this arrangement. The first time was a bit of a rushed cut and plonk. I had all my cornflowers sort of in two different sections, and this time I had a bit more time and I split things down into their constituent stems. So from the sort of whole clutch of cornflowers that I cut, I did split them down to 5 or 6 pieces and then cleaned off the stems, took the leaves off and put them in to give just a very casual, you know, midsummer arrangement. So here goes with the water. So this is my coffee pot, which I bought from a tabletop sale for 50p. I was washing it last night. You know, after a while, if you have things in the kitchen, they just get a bit grimy on the top. And I turned it over and it's Johnson Brothers. Oh, can you hear that? Is this the sound of rainwater dripping down? So I do need, and I can see at the side of the jar as well that I am getting the water where I want it. Oh, and immediately I put that water around the edge. Did you know it bobbed up? And as I push that down, it's rising slightly. I'm a little bit disappointed by that because I've ended up, can you see the clear base? There's a gap there. So that wasn't really what I wanted to happen, but we try these things out together in order that you can adapt what you're doing. So everything was going swimmingly. I'm all with the summer holiday puns here until that rose up. Now I guess perhaps, is that the reason that Anne Kennedy, who showed me this project, used a flower pot, because it was opaque. So if these sides were solid, you wouldn't really know what was happening inside, but I've used a jam jar. There you go. Next time I'll have to remember, as well as packing my scissors, my foam sheets, my watering can, I'll have to make sure I bring a flower pot with me as well. And then the idea is, I'm going to cut from my vase here, bring that closer, is that you then arrange the flowers in the little pockets. So it's another way, you know, jam jar flowers, or, you know, you'll know when you don't have many flowers to arrange and they all slop to one side of the vase. You can get flower frogs. Do you remember we've done, I've showed videos before about rolling out air dry clay and cutting it out with a pastry cutter and making holes so you could have a flower frog like that. So it's just a different version of a flower frog. Now, if I was making this when we stayed in Cornwall, what would I have been using? Well, for me, any holiday, you know, somewhere a tiny bit warmer, different climate to our own here. And to me, if I was to sum up a summer holiday in flowers, it would be hydrangea, it would be agapanthus. And what else did I see? I can't quite remember. And I think one day when we went out, we went to St Michael's Mount, and I was driving, and I think I saw a field of agapanthus because I was having to keep my eyes on the road. I just sort of saw these clouds of flowers. So to me, that's always it's that warmer maritime climate. So the agapanthus and the hydrangeas were beautiful. There were intense blue ones, there were pink ones that were practically red, and there was almost a pink of my echinacea here. So it always reminds me of summer holidays. And fuchsias as well, as a childhood memory, the little ballerina flowers from the bushes. They don't particularly last well as cut flowers. So then what I would do, if I'd been, for my swim, I did take my scissors for a swim one morning because I thought, I'll go down there. But by the time I'd gone swimming and then gone to the local shop to get, croissants and strawberries for breakfast, I, had my hands full, and you do feel a bit of a twit with a pair of scissors in your hand. When I was trying to eye out places where it got a bit overgrown, so it was sort of weedy things I was going to pick, because obviously I couldn't be picking from anyone's gardens, no matter how beautiful I thought their flowers were. So this is the sort of bullet allium. It looks like an overgrown chive. All my chives have gone over, but the seeds have started to develop. And what I've been doing is shaking them in the garden to hope I'll get another patch. I've still got 2 little patches. And that's the other joy as well, isn't it, when you're coming home, is seeing what's happened in the garden. And because it was so dry, I had my sister come round and she watered for me. So nothing looks dead. I don't think anything has gone over in the garden, but it's still a garden that isn't really flowering very much. Our, what's this one called? Fennel. Our fennel is doing really well, but it's multi-branched, and it can be quite hard to use, but it smells absolutely gorgeous. I was working at my desk yesterday, and the flowers were on the side, and I could just get this sort of sense of a honeyish smell coming through, and I couldn't think what it was. And now I've picked these up, and it was the scent of the fennel. So it looks quite tall. So in the garden, it's probably as tall as I am, but it's multi-branched. And if you're doing a big arrangement, you still can't get a stem that's straight enough. And because it flowers here and then it'll work its way around. If I was to cut off, because I wanted the flowery bit, and I've got to end up wasting quite a few of the other stems. It's a bit like when you're coming, with probably a chrysanthemum, a bloom, a spray chrysanthemum, where do you cut it to get the maximum number of stems? So I think I'm going to cut it in half, like that. So at least I've got something else I can put back in my vase. And then I'm going to cut off the 2 side shoots. I'm not sure you can see it, but there's the middle one here, and then there's 2 branches here. So it's just, I'll put it in to begin with. It's just going to be too top heavy like that. I'll do a photograph against a plain background. So I'm going to cut off the side shoots and just have that single flower and put it down one of those folds. I'm wondering now, perhaps if I get more flowers in there, whether the weight of the flowers will anchor down the foam sheet so it doesn't keep bobbing around. We'll have to wait and see. And can I get any more of the offcuts in the vase? Well, let's have a go. Perhaps I can, and they'll sit a little bit lower. It's quite funny watching it. Goes down as I push down to get the flowers in, and then it springs back up again. I don't think it's springing back quite as much though. So let's go. What else have I got? Well, I've got the lovely feverfew. Now the feverfew looks absolutely pristine in the garden, and because we have had those hot few days, as soon as I've picked it, it seems to go over very quickly. And I don't know whether perhaps it's because I'm picking flowers that are several weeks old. That probably is the reason. But you can tell when it's starting to go over, because I'm getting stems there that aren't plopping back into the vase. It's, instead of having a really bright yellow centre to those daisy flowers, they've sort of gone mustard coloured. You probably can't see that from where you're sitting. So I'm going to cut down, and a few of the leaves are just going, instead of that sharp green, they're going a bit yellowy. So feverfew is supposedly good cure for headaches. Put it in a sandwich, and as my sister's father-in-law always said, put it in a sandwich but put lots of Marmite on it because it's got quite a distinctive taste. So I'm going to cut this one a tiny bit shorter because it's competing with the fennel, and to be honest, I think the fennel is possibly the star of the show. So I think probably that's enough. I've got the echinacea, which the petals is just looking a tiny bit bedraggled. So what I might do is that same trick for sunflowers, is to take the petals off. And then you've got this lovely ball shape, which is talking to the form, the shape of the little bullet. It isn't actually called the bullet, allium, I can't remember its name, but it talks to that. And actually, as I do that, I then notice the yellowness of the centre, which is then talking to the yellow of the fennel and the yellow of the feverfew. So a little bit more considered thought about where I'm going to put this in terms of height. So if I kept it the same length that it is now, it's on the same level as the allium, and it sort of gives you a straight line across. We want our arrangements to have rhythm and flow and all the rest of it. And if you sort of create this dot to dot straight line, a horizontal line through, it does detract a little bit from your arrangement. So I'm going to cut off a fair bit of cut off, about, I don't know, 5 or 6 centimetres, and then put that down. Oh, I think I'm going to go a tiny bit lower because this stem is comparatively heavier than the rest. I think I've got to that stage when I'm actually locking in the foam into, you know, I've done it at last. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stems, and my foam has been pushed down to the bottom, so fear not. But all the time I was working, the water has been overflowing from my jam jar, and hence you've probably seen the trickle working its way down my patio table. So probably a good project for doing out of the patio, or at least at your kitchen sink, somewhere where you can be mopping up the water. So what else am I going to do? I think I'd like some more of the cornflower. I quite like the way their heads are sort of nodding off. They're not straight stems, and that's the beauty of arranging your own flowers that you've grown. They may not be plentiful, but you've got all those sort of kinks. The thing to embrace is the fact that they are not standard lengths. They're not supermarket flowers, they're not florist flowers. They haven't all been grown under sort of almost unnatural conditions, you know, in batches of 10 and 20 and 50 and so on. They are just as nature intended them to be. So I've got 3 in there. Now I've cut that feverfew down, I'm not entirely sure I like it. So what I might do, it's branched. So I might come back in and actually pinch out the middle bit. So I've got just 2 flowers here, and then repeated towards the back there are more clustered together. I think it's because I know they're not perfect, and my eye was going to the imperfection rather to the perfection of the flower. Now I've here, oh, it's quite a nice echinacea with a stem on the end. You know, can you go tall? You know, should I? You know what? I reckon I can get away with that. So trim to fit. So it's a little bit higher than that allium, but I think I'm not going to be able to get it down to the bottom. And again, it's on a kinky stem. Oh yes. Now at this point, I should probably be thinking: is this jam jar? Has it got a back? Has it got a front? I'm not sure. I think it's all round. But one thing that's happened is the leaf on the stems here, the leaves here, because it's quite tightly packed. The leaf has sort of just gone up to the stem, so I might go back in and just trim that leaf out. So don't ever trim anything off until you see what it looks like in the vase, because you might want to, you know, adjust it, change it. This of the cornflower's gone over, but if I pinch out those spent petals, it looks like a seed head or a bud about to come into flower. So I can just trick the eye a little bit and have a bit of a whoosh off to the side. Like that. And what else do I need? I quite like the cornflower. My cornflower's quite low, so I might see whether I could introduce a bit more of that blue coming up a little bit higher. Let's have a look. So making sure it goes between those folds. I think I'm probably adjusting here. Well, let's say it's certainly got a naturalistic look. I'm not entirely convinced that it's got quite a pronounced arch on that. I'm not convinced about that. I think I would have liked something that was slightly straighter. Let's see whether we've got something slightly straighter. Perhaps this one here. So cut it off the main stem, get rid of those leaves. This one might work better. So that's the thing to do, is put it in, adjust it. The thing to do is, remember though, is not to overhandle your flowers because they are delicate and you don't want the stems breaking or the blossoms breaking. So that's got slightly more of a controlled arch than a total droop. So I will take a picture of this and post it in the community pages and perhaps even make it the thumbnail for this video in order that you can see what I'm doing, because I realise it's a little bit difficult seeing what I'm doing when I'm backed up so far from you and with greenery as the background, but perhaps I shall carry it forwards and you can see what it looks like. So there we have a summer holiday arrangement. You've been swimming, you packed your bag with your towel and your sandals, a pair of scissors, you've got your cash card, so you can pop to the bakery and the greengrocer's for breakfast and snip a few weeds on the way home, and then you can have that perfect holiday house feel with a lovely breakfast indoors or out on the patio with a beautiful little flower arrangement which cost you next to nothing. So I hope you enjoyed that video and I'll see you again next time.